can hear me. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Yes, some of this was inspired by you, Nameless. I think I see your name down there. Hopefully, you guys can hear me. I don't know. Like, share, subscribe, hit the super chat. Let's do our intros. Right? So, yeah. Hopefully, you guys can hear me. Let me do my intro again. Because where I am, like it's kind of dead zone sometimes. So, I don't know if people can hear or whatever. But yeah, so yes, understanding systems. Are we finally out of the era of alpha your way through with nothing? Alpha your way through, even though all you really have is the ability to breathe. Nobody invested in you, no community truly invested in you, right? The system doesn't believe in you, right? No one likes you. You're a black man. Right? Are we finally out of that era? And it looks like maybe, just maybe, we are. Right? And I'm hoping that we are, because it's really dangerous, right? And I'll put the definitions of system, because there's two definitions that I really, really like. Right? It's mechanisms, right? Think of the inside of a watch, right? And for the longest, because I would argue, and this is me putting my tinfoil hat on, and I don't think you guys will not put your tinfoil hat on also. This system knew that it was under investing in its boys and its men, its black boys and its black men. And so alpha your way through was a really neat one-liner to convince a bunch of black boys and black men who were not invested in, to just do it, to just make it, right? Just produce, right? We're going to sell your dreams off, allow elites to, and like Richard Reeves, the author of Dream Hoarders. We are going to hoard all the dreams in the top 20%. We are going to privatize and sell your dreams off to some foreign nation, or we are going to not invest in you, undercut you by investing in some schools overseas, and then the highest ranked people over there will bring them in with H-1B visas. We're going to do all of that, but we still want you to produce, right? Pay for these women, take care of these women and these children. Some from you, some from other men, right? And there were black men and boys, mainly black men. We're not gonna, chastise the boys, they're underage, that really thought you could alpha your way through that, because we had a handful of black entertainers that made some money, even though they came from the absolute bottom. Because we had Jay-Z, and because we had 50 Cent, right? And because we had Eazy-E and Dr. Dre, right? We thought that was a thing. We thought you can actually alpha your way through. As the nameless protagonist is, we turned the possibility into a high probability. If you just put a little bit of effort in, you'll be all right. And it doesn't work that way. And we're learning more and more that it doesn't work that way, and it never did. Alpha your way through was for our egos. And it was this society's way of saying, yeah, we're not going to invest in you, but good luck. Just put a little bit of effort, you'll be all right, right? Niggas get shot every day, B, you'll be all right, right? And we allowed women, namely black women, and we allowed the system to say, we're going to invest in everybody else in some type of way, except for you, black boys and black men. But you'll be all right, because where else on the planet are people oppressed and not invested in, and then they still make it to the top rungs of society? Oh yeah, during the time of the most atrophying, of that upward mobility on top of that. That's what they were saying to black boys and black men. Yeah, upward mobility really hasn't been a thing for like 40 years. But if you work really hard, you can still make it up to the top rungs, to that top 20% of society. Right? Big ass commercial. You too can make it. And yes, a handful of us have stories where we really came from like abject poverty in the American sense, or maybe if you're a child of immigrants, right? You came from abject poverty from another nation in the diaspora, right? And now you're okay, or maybe even now you're part of the top 20%. But how likely is that though? Right? What this is the decadent veil, exactly. As a matter of fact, I want to do a whole stream about that. I just don't want to steal Yvette and Tone's thing, but like that was, I know, like I said before, I'm not gonna get into FBA versus ADOS, but y'all gotta give it to them for that, because everybody was walking. I'm part of the black community. Yes, I'm not ADOS, but I'm part of the black community, and I was around ADOS. I was around different black people from the diaspora, both from the continent and from the Caribbean, and even the Afro-Latinos that see themselves as black and are, you would consider black. They don't have that whole, South American or Caribbean cooning thing they got. No, they're not one of those. I've been up and down the eastern seaboard, and black people were talking like, because a handful of us got some money, that means something, right? And I'm not gonna poo-poo it. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that none of this stuff matters. It does matter for young people, young black people, to see that there are black people that can have nice things, right? And can contribute to the community, and that are secretly donating, right? When we find out these people are secretly donating to all type of charities and organizations that are supposedly there to help black people. That is a good thing. I'm not gonna poo-poo that. But we made that seem far more likely than it actually is. That is happening far more readily than it actually is, right? It has made people really, really delusional. And you can add that on top of the alpha your way through crap, right? And what is heartbreaking as a black man is hearing working class black men, poor black men, talk like that. And then knowing, we're not talking about your optimism here and your hope and your faith, no. Knowing that most likely that ain't gonna be the story for them, right? Knowing that, And it is heartbreaking when somebody come to you with, shout out to Tariq Nasheed, with some rhythm spoons idea, and you're trying so hard not to poo-poo it, because you never know. I mean, like, this dude could be like the kid off of Matrix bending spoons with his mind, right? Very, it possible. Likely, no. But that alpha your way through, and you can make it no matter what, and you can make it if you try. Like, we literally have, what's the is it Michael Sandel? PhD, white dude out of, I want to say Harvard, that wrote the book of The Myth of Meritocracy. Like, you will have sociologists and not really demographers, but sociologists like ringing the bells. People that work for these think tanks. That's why even some people are proposing universal basic income, because they're like, this thing is not sustainable. The top 1% detaching. They're truly global. Speaking about what Nameless is, they're truly global, and they're detaching themselves from your reality. And their reality being linked to your reality was very important throughout human history. And then the top 20% is detaching themselves from the bottom 80%'s reality. They're acting as the functionary of the top 1%. And then the rest of us in the bottom 80 have your imagination and your work ethic and your physical and mental strength, and hopefully That's enough to help you sustain yourself or subsist, right? But prosperity is being prosperous. That's a whole different conversation, right? Right? So, and I'm sorry, pause you guys. I just watched this guy almost kill himself trying to cut off an 18-wheeler. But yeah, so if we don't understand systems, then of course you're going to tell young people, young men, young black men to just offer your way through. You're a man anyway, right? Isn't that what Paris Milan and Cynthia G and those type of women are speaking on? I don't really hear Chrissy do that. I think she know better. But the real talk with Yannies and the Cynthia G's and the Chrissies, that's how they speak. No, you don't need that investment. You're a man, right? Right? Just off the strength or just off the merit of you just being born, excuse me, XY chromosomes, you'll be all right. It don't matter if we don't invest in you. It don't matter if we don't do anything for you. You know how to walk, right? Somebody taught you how to read? What, you barely know how to read? You don't know how to do math? You'll be all right anyway. Don't worry about it. Because some D-boys made some money in the 80s and the 90s and was able to flip that into a rap career. So you'll be all right. Right? Right? But subscribe, hit the super chat. Super chats will be read out loud. So that's the game. We're not going to invest in you, but because there's these like one-off and some anomalies of some black people, that some black men in particular that were underdeveloped and somehow they still made it, right? By the skin of their teeth, by some super luck. Because that happened, you'll be all right. Understanding how systems work has really screwed a lot of people, black men, even black women, because they thought they could play the lottery dream with the handful of black men that made it, and then they thought they could swirl and divest if the numbers came up short and it wasn't enough black men and black boys. And guess what? It ain't working. Oops. If you knew women wanted to marry up, if you knew about hypergamy, then you should have invested in your boys and your men. That way they have something to marry up to. Systems. How things move about on this planet. Right? How things work in concert. But we all kept on going off of the one-offs. This one-off story, like I call it, lottery dreams. We have so underdeveloped and underinvested in our young people, generally speaking now. And then in our boys and our men, and then specifically on our black boys and black men, we find ourselves in this position now where no one knows what's about to happen, except for a handful of sociologists. And if you're a black boy or black man, you pretty much come out the womb a sociologist because you know how the system works, because it keeps its foot on your neck like all the time. You got 60-40 split in college enrollment right now. If in a decade, if this doesn't reverse and no sociologist sees this reversing, you're going to have 66-33 college enrollment, and college attendees, excuse me. Remember, more boys, I mean, they would be young men, they would be considered young men. More young men drop out of college than women do. Than graduation. You could be looking at a 70-30 split college graduation in the next decade and a half. But if you don't understand systems, then you truly think that women would be okay marrying across, in air quotes, marrying down financially. And here we are. That marriage rate has plummeted. 150-year low. Not understanding systems. Being hopeful. I didn't say faithful. But we say faith without works is dead. There you go. The work was investing in your boys and your men regardless. And that leads me to believe how much of this system is really zero sum. You've invested in your girls and your women over the past 50 years. Not so much in your boys and your men, or only in your boys and your men in the top 20%. So I guess they're going to be having fun. Shout out to all you brothers that's making like $80, $90, $100,000 plus a year, and you're over 6 feet tall, and you're good looking. You are going to run the board with women. Have fun. Enjoy yourself. Don't get them pregnant. White, black, Latina, Asian, or otherwise. But for the rest of us in the bottom 80, who might have average looks, normal, everyday American personality, right? Have fun. Under 6 feet tall, have fun. But because our system, and this is where hyper individuality comes in, and alpha your way through comes in, and the slashing of just about everything that helps to prop up a society. They really started that in the late 70s, but supercharged it in the 80s, and then I don't know, put a blower or a turbocharger on it in the 90s. Because they did that, we find ourselves here. Shout out to Spain Man. I looked down on my red light. Spain Man said he got other people saying oops on other panels. To LOL. It's good to know my ideas are coming out. And that's the point. That's much of the reason why I'm in the Black Manosphere. Yes, it's to talk about relationships and intimacy and black women, because that's who I'm with. That's who I prefer. And I actually do care about the outcomes of black women. Not as much as I care about the outcomes of black men and boys. But I do care about their outcome because we're linked by the hip. Right? But I'm also in the Black Manosphere for the brotherhood. And for my good ideas and thoughts to propagate. All the stuff y'all think is garbage, y'all could put out the window. But my good ideas to propagate. Yeah. Right? I'm glad we're starting to have these conversations about how foolish some of the things we've been saying over the past decade have been. One man army your way out of here, right? When one man army your way out of here. And that was like never gonna be a thing. One man, you are going to be what? A guppy in the room full of sharks? Right? Because y'all all have internalized that Jay-Z line about being in a room full of sharks. Right? So now we think that's a thing. Of course I'm not even gonna say it. I'm just gonna give y'all, I'm gonna describe it for you guys, and then you tell me who you think did this. At a green light, somebody's trying to cross from the right side to the left side, blocking traffic right now, and now they done caused a whole backup, like maybe 7 cars deep behind them. You tell me the race and gender you think did that. I ain't even saying nothing. I'm not. Don't worry about it. Mind you, it's a green light, so you know everybody's trying to go. I'm not. Right? Yeah, so that's understanding recipe for disaster. Because you may not see yourself as black, but the rest of the world does. Now, in other places, they may not react to you with the same angst and apprehension as people do in America, but you're still black. right? Maybe your Americanness weighs a little bit more in other places, but you are still black, right? Go ask the brother where was in somewhere in Eastern Europe that got his head top knocked off by some white racist because he was trying to like holler at some girl or something like that. And his white friends watched him get murdered in front of them. You're still black. All right? Ain't no alpha in your way through that. Not understanding how systems work have gotten us here. Allowing rich, white, racist elite, shout out to Milton Friedman, to gut social programs and just absolutely annihilate them. And then we, not mainly black people now, this is not mainly black people, but white boomers cheering that on to spite black people, namely black men, coming out of the civil rights movement, right? And now we find ourselves here, and even their sons got to eat crow, and their grandsons got to eat crow, right? Allowing these people to take these jobs overseas because they were looking for the cheapest labor cost humanly possible, because they were spoiled with Jim Crow and they were spoiled with slavery, right? Has got us here. There are people, now this includes some black people, that really thought you could do the bare minimum for your boys and your men and they would still make it because they had some weird notion of young, men born in the 1920s and 30s, and somehow they were okay. Yeah, because they had factory jobs in the 60s, in the 50s. And you thought you would get the same type of middle class outcome from these boys and men born in the 70s and 80s and even 90s without that base of like, you know what? Yeah, we're gonna okay invest in you. We're gonna somewhat invest in you, but here's some unionized factory jobs, and here's some office jobs and whatever, and you'll be all right. You're gonna be at least all right. And you and your middle class income will be able to support 2 and 3 kids and 4 kids and a wife. And you'll have 2 cars and a 3 and 4 bedroom house. And you'll be able to send maybe 2 or 3 of those kids to college. And because so many people didn't understand systems, they didn't understand how much that promise was going to fall flat. Right? How much of that promise was going to fall flat? And now we find ourselves here. Train tracks, train tracks, train tracks. Okay, we're done. Right? So many people, mainly white boomers and some white silent generation, wanted to screw over black people and black men specifically coming out of the civil rights generation, that they screwed over everyone, including their own children and grandchildren, mainly their grandchildren, right? You might be old enough as an Xer, as a white person, where you slip through, or maybe even as a black person. But those younger Xers and millennials and some older Gen Z, oh yeah, they getting their head top knocked right off right now, socially and economically. Because people didn't understand how this thing affects that thing, affects that thing, affects that thing. And how these are all interconnected. And you pull one of those cards, it's like playing Jenga, right? You pull one of those bricks and the whole thing comes crashing down. Or you pull too many of those bricks and the whole thing comes crashing down. Or you pull this brick from this end and that brick from that end, and it destabilizes the whole entire structure and the whole thing comes crashing down. I just want these people to admit that the neoliberal project failed. Or maybe it did succeed in the way they wanted you to, which is vacuuming the wealth and the dreams and aspirations to the top. Because that's the whole premise of the book Dream Hoarders. It's not just that the top 20% are hoarding all of the wealth. They're hoarding the access, right? They're hoarding the dreams. That's why it's called Dream Hoarders. Think about it. Your children want to do work at one of these places that's not going to pay them so that they can get their feet wet in college. How is that possible unless you can afford it? You see the problem there? Women are getting a hard-ass lesson in systems right now. We're not going to invest in our boys and our men, right? But then we want our daughters to have somebody to marry up to, right? Practice hypergamy in the next 20 years, 25 years. And now we find ourselves here, right? You underinvest in your people, and then you wonder why you end up in this situation. You underinvest in your boys and your men, you wonder why you end up in this situation. You use your black boys and black men in a society as the perpetual boogeyman, and you wonder why you end up in this situation. Not either not understanding systems or thinking they're not that important, because a handful of individuals have, air quotes, alpha their way through from the bottom to the very top of the socioeconomic ladder, right? Because you have Oprah and Jay-Z in a society, you think that's a thing. You could tell people don't understand systems. Once again, I'm gonna bring this episode from Kevin up. You think you so don't understand systems, you actually think the average income for young men, not even for just black men. I think the episode he just was saying men, right? It's some 70, 80 grand a year. You had woman after woman saying that because you don't understand how these things work. You could tell you don't understand how these things work when people like me speak. And then you hear people say, well, just make it. Don't worry about anyone else. Say that to the people being robbed by your 16 and 20 and 25-year-olds at gunpoint for their Range Rovers. Right? Say that to the people who just walked into their house and it was turned upside down and they were robbed because they didn't care about everyone else. What, the unwashed masses, right? They didn't care about those people. And those people only live 2 miles away from them, 3 miles away from them. Or even just on the other side of the train tracks. Say that to those people. Because you don't care how systems work. You don't care whether the masses of your society are doing well and have a good idea and a good faith that if I truly work hard, or not even work hard, if I just do the right things, I'll be all right. And we're losing that in this society, right? Joe said, then while underinvested, they pulled the bootstraps card. Exactly. Exactly. And then your people find themselves in this position. I'm so glad we're having these conversations now. Being led by a lot of us. Charles Faulkner, Officer Charles, the Nameless Protagonist, BGS Inmore, Art of Inmore, Art New Style, yours truly, Mr. Z, the Roguish Son. We're speaking about these things because it's like, wait a minute, how is this supposed to work? Wait a minute, it's not working. It's not even like we're in the beginning of this project. It's clearly not working, and then you still have people talking about alphaing your way through. We're not going to invest anything in you. We're going to create a society full of hyper-individualism, and then you just make alpha your way through, and you better don't commit no crimes either. Because if you get caught, we're gonna hit you with everything. And now you find yourselves here. So crime, what they said, violent crime was going down pre-COVID all across the country. So your sons weren't committing violent crimes. You know what they were doing? Sitting at home jacking off. Sitting at home masturbating and playing video games. You didn't invest in them. And like now you can see them, they seem bewildered. They seem like they don't, indifferent to their own life, not even just to women. That's where you get, in China, that's where you get the laying flat concept, right? I'm just gonna do the bare minimum to subsist. If my parents kick me out, then I'll just do the bare minimum to have a roommate and to be able to pay that, to pay my side of the rent and pay whatever utilities I have and just exist. If I have a woman, great. If I don't, whatever. That's what internet porn and video games and you know, maybe drinking with my boys once every other week or once a month is for. You know? You didn't invest in your boys and your men. You barely invested in the Xers. You really didn't invest in the millennials. And the oldest of Gen Z, we get in the report card, they're saying, yeah, nah, we didn't really get any investment here either. Right? We got a bunch of prosperity preaching in manifest language. Right? Now you find yourselves here. How does it... look at all the young men and young women right now. On a hamster wheel. Many of them not progressing. And we could do the individual responsibility thing. And yeah, you went to college for basket weaving. You didn't go to school for STEM. You didn't go to the right high school. You didn't go to the right college. We could do that. We could do the whole blame and shame thing. That's okay when maybe 10% of your society, right? But when reports are coming out that Britain, which is literally a monarchy, has more social dynamism and upward mobility than America, it's not a good look. TYT Toyota Tutor or Toyota Texan now says, pause right there, hashtag pause right there payment. Hit the like, y'all. Yes, y'all listen to Toya, scholar right there. Scholar and a lady, right? You're seeing that this is not going to end well. How do you think you're going to underinvest in your boys and your men for decades? We're not even specifically speaking about the black ones right now. How did you think this was going to go? Now you're trying to rejigger the economy to pretty much only function for the top 20%? Because you done sucked out all the wealth from the bottom 80. They don't have anything left. Right? Then there's those in the top part of the bottom 80 really trying to jump over to the top 20%. And they see that gap growing. They see that chasm forming, right? The Grand Canyon forming between them and that top 20%, and they trying to jump over. And when I say that, I mean they're trying to push their children over, right? Because we don't believe in systems, remember. It's all hyper individuality. So screw everyone else. I'll just make sure my daughter gets on the other side. Until it's time for your daughter to start dating and get married. Oops. Now she's fighting with that whole entire rest of the 100% for that top 20% guy. Because you didn't care about systems. And now your sons are ducking and dodging. Your sons in that top 20% are ducking and dodging pregnancy. They're ducking and dodging scheming and scamming women because there's only 20% of them. They're ducking and dodging other men that hate on them because they're part of the top 20% and that gap is growing. All because you and the other top 20% and really top third don't care about systems. You don't care about how these things are interconnected. You don't care about the mechanisms. You don't care about the institutions. The institutions could atrophy and break apart and fall apart for all you care. Right? You allowed these people to say public institutions, all of these public institutions are no good? All of them? Once again, the Reagan quote, the scariest words with the scariest words in the English language, or I'm with the government and I'm here to help. You allowed Ronald Reagan to come out and say that. Then a couple decades later, a tape leaks with him and Nixon laughing up and making fun of African leaders. Y'all, there's some boomers and silent generation. I'm specifically speaking about the black ones that thought that this guy was an ally. You thought Ronnie Reagan, who put in gun laws because Black Panthers marched on him, what, in Sacramento? They instituted new gun laws like practically overnight when he was governor of California. You thought that guy was your ally. Why? Because he was a failed actor, but he was good enough as an actor to pretend to be president for 8 years, especially his last 4 years when he was, not really there mentally. Right? I gotta read this comment. Lithium 19 says the exilios like you, Mr. Z, and late Gen X are the last people to be able to have kids and homes in large numbers. It's what I'm seeing in my life. I don't think that's all the way true, but there is something to be said. You're not 100% wrong. You are not 100% wrong. As a matter of fact, I watched a segment with, and I've watched this segment, I've watched different segments that kind of speak to what you're saying, where the real estate investors, pretty much they're buying up like the Black Rocks and stuff. They're buying up homes, not to just fix them up and put them back on the mortgage market or on the whole housing market, but to keep them perpetually on the renters market. So if you don't know and you're an Xer or a boomer, you're going to be speaking to your kids like, why can't you get a house? First, the prices are insane. And there's actually charts that show the percentage of your income, that like how it went from how homes went from maybe 20 or 30% of your income to now they're flipping over 50% of people's incomes just to pay off these homes monthly, right? Then you have a shrinking pool of homes because a handful of people on the top, corporations and Uber and kind of rich people, are buying up multiple homes at a time to just keep them on the renters market perpetually. So that means that house is never going to be up, or at least not in the foreseeable future. And even, let me finish that statement. Not in the foreseeable future are those homes going to be up for you to purchase. Then, even if we do have a crisis, depending on the size of the crisis, it's only going to knock off the rich people that bought a couple dozen homes, right? That those homes will then fall into foreclosure, and then, maybe you could pick it up. But the corporation that's buying thousands of homes, no. Right? But if you don't understand how systems work, then you allow for that. BGS, and obviously Art was there, it was his channel. BGS brought up Glass-Steagall last night. How many people thought it was genius to repeal Glass-Steagall and let your commercial banks and investment banks merge into one? How long before that did the housing crisis happen? I mean, excuse me, how long after that did the housing crisis happen? You realize we didn't even make it a full century since the Great Depression before they started repealing all the safety nets and all the safeguards after the Great Depression? The country didn't even wait a century before it started saying, yeah, why do we have Glass-Steagall again? Why do we have all these antitrust laws? Why do we... Y'all didn't even wait a century. Because your politicians don't think that systems matter. The individual citizens don't think that system matters. Your different ethnic groups and racial groups, some of them don't think that systems matter. And they're all affected by systems. It gets really dark and depressing once you start putting numbers together. Oh, dark. I was one of the people, I'll pat myself on the back for this. I was one of the people that told you, and I rest in peace, Kevin. I said that before, Kevin. Hey, if you're not in the top 20%, marriage is kind of really, really dangerous. Those are the people that's getting married and staying married. Maybe Kevin said that back in the days of the Coliseum, and I didn't hear it. That's very possible. But I could see that. Because it was not just about who's getting married. You could get married. All you need is your little marriage license, what it costs, depending on what state you live in, it's nothing, right? $100, $200 and you married. $50, I don't know, right? But staying married, oh, now we're dealing with a different story. Getting married and staying married for multiple decades. And you look at who's doing that, top 20, top 25%. Other people get married, they just get divorced. And the further down you go, economically, they don't even get married. But if you don't understand systems and that all of this is predicated on the man's income, yeah, you heard right, then what you think is that systems don't matter and you could just beat your children and grandchildren over the head with some morality talk or some Bible verses, right? And everything will be all right. Right? Everything will be all right. You look at divorce, who files for divorce, and the reason why: money, financially related. If you don't understand how systems work, then you don't think that matters. First of all, you don't even know what I just said. Then, if you do know, you think once again that you could just make it happen just with having faith and believing in God, believing in the institution of marriage. It's not your son you have to worry about. He might cheat, but it's not your son you're gonna have to worry about. He's 20%. He files for divorce. 25%, maybe 30%. Yeah, no, it's not your son you have to worry about. It's your daughter in her marriage you got to worry about. She's just as likely to cheat, but she's even more likely to file for divorce because your son-in-law don't make enough. Or your son-in-law does make enough, but he don't make enough for her to live a balling life. And because you don't understand how systems work, you didn't even try to buffer that or try to mitigate for that by raising your daughter like, listen, he might be the breadwinner, but it's not going to be by a great margin. You're going to have to make things work with him financially. You didn't even raise your daughter like that because you don't understand how systems work, because you don't think they matter. It's crazy running into people that, one, don't care about systems, two, don't know how they work, then three, so don't care, they don't even try to rejigger this thing by like manipulating the young people, right? There's a handful of that going on in church environments, right? But outside of that, these people aren't even trying to mitigate for the fallout of their BS by like trying to manipulate the young people because they don't think these things even matter. That's insane, right? Because a bunch of people think they can alpha their way through, including the women. The women think they can alpha their way through with all this weird manifest talk, right? That's why you see them in I no longer wanting to be involved with some of your more Europeanized established religions, Christianity. Well, Islam is not more Europeanized, but you know. And that's why they're engaging in your African spiritualities. That's why they're playing around with voodoo and okomi and all this other things, right? Not because they actually truly believe in these things. Not because they really want to disconnect from these kind of bastardized, if you want to be pejorative, you call them the three desert dogmas, which is Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. If you want to be insulting. But your young women aren't disconnecting from that because they actually want to believe in something bigger. They're disconnecting from that because these religions aren't producing what they think they should produce. Right? KW Dawn says tarot cards. Right? So your young people, that's where your young women are. Just reaching for anything. And then your young men are told just to alpha their way through. We're not going to invest in you, or we're going to invest in you very minimally, but you better come out on the other end a millionaire. And I'm also glad that we're playing around with the word hopeism, because that's what this is. It's not faith. Once again, faith without works is dead. It's hopeism. I call it lottery dreams. You're going to put $2 or $3 in, hoping that you win how many millions of dollars, right? I'm sorry, y'all. I just came up on a parking, and I had to hurry up and jump on that before somebody else got it, right? But yeah. So that's where you find yourselves now. Because you dealt with about a generation or two that either didn't understand systems or thought they didn't matter. And that's mainly white boomers and white silent generation. Oh yeah, and also definitely throw in trying to spite black people. And now that's come to bite them in the rear end, them and their children and their grandchildren. As it should. Right? You don't understand how these mechanisms work. You don't understand how these things work. And even I am learning more and more how important they are. And I don't have it all together. That's why I like hearing the elders talk. I'm only 36, so the elders is everybody 40 and over, right? And that's why I like listening to them. Because they have a better understanding of when these systems were more intact. They were born before the Reagan era, right? They were born before the Chicago Boys. They were born before neoliberalism really hit. They watched the destruction of these systems. No-fault divorce. You know who brought you no-fault divorce? Your capitalist king, Ronald Reagan. Ronnie Reagan brought you no-fault divorce. You know the second coming of Jesus on the right? Yeah, he's who brought you that. Now you leave the toilet seat up one too many times and your wife want to divorce you. Shout out to Dr. Thunder. What's going on? I have two docs in the room now. Art New Style and Dr. Thunder. Right? Who's honking that hard? Wait a minute. Whose horn is that? Oh, by the way, for those of you that don't live in the South, y'all don't really know about these truck horns. Y'all don't know. These dudes be getting train horns on they lifted Rams and F-150s and Silverados. Right? And if you're not prepared, they'll honk and you'll jump. You'll damn near cause an accident. Right? Shout out to you again, Rogish, because I know you probably got a special place in hell for Ronald Reagan. Like me. And I was born in the 80s, but when I did my research, and I started doing this research heavy when I was like 19, 20 years old, and I was like, this man was the worst. Just left and right, the worst. And then artard Bill Clinton came in with the third way and only backed up that crap. Meanwhile, we got some wayward boomers in the 90s that they didn't hold their nose and vote for Clinton. Right? No, they were fans of him because why? He could play the saxophone? Because there was rumors going around that he cheated on his wife in Arkansas and maybe with a black woman. Right? Talking about I smoked but I didn't inhale. And he got a thing for ugly, pudgy white women. Because it wasn't just Monica Lewinsky, y'all. That man been cheating. Right? But once again, if you don't understand how systems work, you were one of the black people that thought it was a good idea for Biden and Clinton in the 94 crime bill. You thought that was a good idea. Dr. Thunder said first black president. I know, right? I grew up hearing that and low-key believing it. Right? What, Clinton came in 92? When I was, 5, 6 years old? No, 92, yeah, 6 years old. Hearing that from black people. Spain Man, you know it is, right? I'm not even going to read your comment. Y'all read Spain Man's comment. You know it is. I ain't trying to get disappeared, Spain Man. Oh, hell no. No, hell no. No, let me read Black Uru's comment. So black people should have either voted for Reagan's Vice President Ross Perot. Hell no. Not Ross Perot. Well, because Bush Senior didn't win that second term. Who's the other? It's one other. There's another person that's in my mind right now. It's not Ross Perot. It's somebody else. Is it Ross Perot's face? Right? It was another conservative politician. It's not Newt Gingrich either. I can't remember who it is. But no, Black Uru. I'm speaking about the enthusiasm. Black Uru says Clinton was an easy choice by comparison. I have to give it to you, Black Uru. I was only, I don't know, 6 years old when he was first elected. Right? But we got what? The repeal of Glass-Steagall, Telecom Act. The repeal of the repeal of the Telecom Act. That's how we get to solidify. That's why you can't go anywhere on TV or movies without the same type of storylines repeating themselves over and over and over again. Bob Dole, thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you, what though? Bob Dole. That was the other, yeah. Why? Because we have like what, 5 or 6 entertainment houses in the country? 5 or 6. How many cable companies we have around the country? Is it again 5 or 6 or something like that? How many cell phone providers do we have again in the country? You see all these near monopolies? I could do this forever. Even alcohol companies, I didn't even know that. Like the big parent companies, it's about 5 or 6. I think 5 or 6 own like 90% of all the stuff you see when you go into the liquor store. And maybe 10% or something like that. 10 or 15 is like everybody else. Because once you get to what, Carter's administration on up, you get neoliberalism. And then remember, this is black people and other people feeling disillusioned coming out of the 60s and saying, well, we did all of this marching, we did all of this protesting. Where are the residuals for that? So people stopped doing collectivism and said, screw all that, I'm doing hyper individuality. So you get hyper individuality with neoliberalism, voila. Screw systems. And a handful of our elders still thought that it mattered. This is where you get the Black Rus and the BGSs. But a whole lot of other people raise their children to only look out for number one. And now your children and your grandchildren, I would know because I'm one of them. If you're an Xer, especially a younger Xer, a millennial or a Gen Z, maybe your individual parents didn't raise you like that, but that was what was in the atmosphere. And now you're here. That's why you ever hear when people say, oh, what the women think don't matter, what these people do don't matter. What? Once again, that hyper individuality, not understanding how systems work. Doesn't matter. You think what 50% of the black community think doesn't matter, and it's actually over 50% more black women than black men. You don't think that systems matter. You don't see these things as being connected. You don't think that these social and political mechanisms matter. Maybe y'all didn't realize. Did we forget when Trump came in and he did that Muslim ban? Overnight, the airports didn't know what to do. Did we forget? This man blinked his eye and the country was like, wait. Oh, are they supposed to stay in the airports overseas? Or what about when they already landed? Like, these people are halfway. They're in air right now. What are we supposed to do? Are we not going to let them out the airport even though they're here already in the US? From these particular countries? Don't understand how these systems work, how these mechanisms work. Right? Rogan said, they're in air right now. For real. And you have this across our society because you're dealing with decades of hyper individuality mixed with neoliberalism, mixed with a very myopic view of how systems work. And I said myopic. Some of these people they don't even think it matters. Spainman says all this individuality, but we're supposed to be working for a collective, likely trying to shame black men about not renovating a restaurant that's went out of business years ago. It's just Man, when you really, really look at how big some of these corporations and companies are, and the money they're making, rivaling their some of their market caps rival nations' economies, right? How many companies do we have in the US now that broke a trillion dollars? I think Apple was the first, right? But how many companies we have in the US that's over $1 trillion market cap? The majority of the countries on the planet do not have a GDP of $1 trillion. There's China, there's the US, there's Japan, Western European powers, and then just about everybody else is a few hundred billion, hundreds of billions of dollars. And America alone has what? I know it's what, at least what, close to a dozen, maybe high single digit companies that have a market cap of $1 trillion, right? But you guys, I should have been inside a long time ago. I gotta get out of here. But yeah, like, share, subscribe, hit the super chat. Not understanding how systems work and not caring how they work, and this is a left and right and centrist political problem. This is not exclusive to the left. This is not exclusive to the right, right? And some of your politicians know how they work, obviously, and they're trying to dismantle them because they want a particular outcome from society. Then the other part of your politicians want to rejigger this thing to work for only a certain group of people. But if you, as the everyday citizen, doesn't understand that, then you'll allow it. If you don't understand how systems work, you think you can one-man army all of this, right? This is how we get into the conversation when we're speaking about Chris Smalls and unionizing, and people were just like, well, if you don't like the working conditions, just quit. Either you know how systems work and you're being very, very manipulative, or you don't know how systems work. Right? We find ourselves in a really interesting position right now in the 21st century. Things are changing so fast, people could barely hold on. Right? Hyperinflation, and a bunch of people that are only looking out for number one, and shrewdly so. It's not just looking out for number one like we've always done throughout human history. No, shrewdly looking out for number one. Everywhere I go is people saying, yeah, you can't trust them, and you can't trust these people, and you can't trust that, and da-da-da-da. All right. And then you find yourselves here. Your daughters and sons can't connect with each other. Sex rates super low. Marriage rates super low. Right? Not having children, this is not sustainable. Because people don't understand how these things are interconnected. Like I said, the inside of a watch, right? And the people that do understand it, like a perfect example, when you see the school system, and black people got to remember, most of us went to public schools. But when you see the push for charter schools, which I attended when I was younger, right? And you see Betsy DeVos, the former education secretary, and you don't understand how these things connect eventually, because they want to just do away with public schooling. And yes, public schooling has its issues, but do you understand how doing away with public schooling completely, how that benefits them and their progeny, and how that screws you and your children? Do you even understand how tying school funding to zip codes screws you and keeps the perpetual poverty going? And how it should be a standard, this is how much schools get depending on their population, period, point blank. Black Uru says a society that is not having children is dead. That means a whole lot of people are dying in this world. Right? A whole lot of nations are dying in this world. And that importing people in, I don't know how much longer we have of that. America bringing people from south of the border. The Europeans are bringing people from the Middle East. Australia's bringing in people from the rest of Oceania. Or is it Oceania? I don't even remember how you pronounce that region where Australia occupies, and Indonesia and stuff. Right? I don't know what to tell you. Go see how these dominoes fall. Right? Go figure out why the watch isn't working. Systems. And how these things are interconnected. And how this mechanism, how these things are tied in. You saw this with the gutting of the voters' rights, right? You see this also with the repeal of Roe versus Wade, and how those states that wanted to lessen abortions, how they just jumped on it. Like, most of your politicians get it. But the rest of us, not so much. And then you raise your children to alpha their way through it. Yes, even some of your daughters. Although that's not what you say. That's not what you call it with the daughters. Your daughters get burnt out. Your sons get disillusioned. And burnt out. Right? And then you turn around and blame them. So I'll truly pause right there. Thanks for listening in, you guys. Love, peace, and chicken grease. Mr. Z out. All right, everyone. I'm out of here.